So, Coach, now that we've started this process, and I've been a couple months into my training, I feel like I'm hitting the ball well and starting to perform better. The next step is to try to get some exposure, and I know that you've worked with quite a few guys that have been very successful and moved on, and I'm wondering what's the important things that I need to focus on my path to get the proper exposure.
Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start to transition you into performer mode, meaning you've done a lot of really good drills, you've done them the right way, you've improved yourself mechanically, you've improved yourself physically. So now we want to start putting you in performer mode so that you know every time you go to train that you're going to perform at some point during the workout. Meaning you're going to chart your field goals. We're going to see how many field goals you can make and how many field goals you can make that meet the pro criteria. So the transition for that getting exposure has to be, you have to get into performer mode. And that's not focusing on mechanically anymore consciously, but trusting yourself that you've done enough of the drills, that the repetitions are coming through, so that that's in your subconscious and you just focus on striking the ball solid and making the kicks. That will prepare you for when the exposure opportunity comes. And how we generate the exposure is, you've had a real good college career, you got signed really quick after you were draft eligible, and so there's a little history there. Yeah, you've been out for a little bit, but people will be curious because you have a pretty decorated background, and they know that even though there's a time period gone, it's still kicking a football. So it's not like it was a speed thing where you might have lost speed or strength, and that period of time could be instrumental to you not gaining that back. So I think that there will be interest in you because of your decorated background. So the exposure part really comes from letting people know that you're back in the business. Getting an agent is really helpful because that person would be responsible for making those contacts. Going to combines where some of the scouts and the special teams coaches would be, to be able to see you firsthand. The other thing is sending them a tape. One of the things that really works in football, and it doesn't just work with kickers, it works at every position group, is that you need to make a tape and send the tape out. They will watch the tape because they can't afford not to. If you're the next greatest kicker and they don't take 10 minutes to watch it, and you end up on somebody else's team, and everybody knows that tape was sent to them too, they're gonna want to know why they didn't watch it. So unlike college, where they're inundated with 300, 400, 500 tapes a year, they don't have time to watch all of them. So they'll do a little bit more background research of calling the coach, going to the schools and having ties with the high school coaches to figure out who they need to watch first. The pros are going to watch it all because that's what they hire people just to do 24/7. Who's out there, who's available, and what did we rate them? So they have a pro scouting department, and a college scouting department, and a free agent scouting department. So they will watch it. So those three mechanisms, making a tape, sending that out to all the teams, going to combines where there may be somebody can see you, pro coaches, pro scouts, and then sending out, having an agent who will market you and make calls for you. So those are the three means of exposure. But the exposure doesn't work unless you got the performance piece. So that's why we want to get the performance piece in place as we're looking for the venues and charting the course of how we're going to get the exposure so people see you. So it's mid-February, and we know that toward the end of March there's a combine that you want to attend. So that's why we're starting to dial up the performance mode and give you a good 5 weeks of this type of training where every workout has an accountability standard of how we need you to perform, and put you in that mode as we put together the exposure piece.
Okay, the next question I'd ask is specifically about agents. Is it important to have an agent that has experience with kickers, with NFL specialists? Is it important to get one that does represent kickers, or is it better to have one that doesn't have a conflict of interest of representing a kicker?
Both. It's important to have somebody that has connections and can pick the phone up and call people, that has a reputation that they will listen to them. So really the first thing you should look for is how many people do you have in the league, how many people were high draft picks that you really didn't have to do anything for, and then how many people were maybe free agents that you worked real hard to get the exposure to get them in the league. Does it help to have kickers that you already represent? Yes. Does it help to have kickers you represent that aren't employed? No, because then you have 2 or 3 people that you're competing against with your agent, and you're not sure who will get recommended first. So that is a consideration. So there's no right or wrong answer with what an agent needs to be. I think the number one thing that I would recommend that you look for, that people look for, is somebody who believes in what you're doing, who believes in you, because they have to sit across the table and represent you. And if they're lukewarm at all, you don't want to take a chance that they're not willing to speak up and say something for you. So I would say the number one thing is an agent represents you. Do they represent and believe that you can do what you want to do? Some people will just take volume, try to get a high volume of guys and hope 2 or 3 hit. So that would be the first thing. You don't want to live your life knowing that somebody represented you and did believe in you. That's not a good feeling. And so you want to look for that first. The second criteria I would look for is, has that person had to work real hard for helping guys get in the league, free agents particularly, or have all those guys been drafted and they pretty much are slotted because they got drafted?
Right.
So I would look for those 2 qualities, with the idea of, how many kickers do you represent. If they're not signed, then yes, that would be a consideration. You don't want to be a number.
Gotcha.
So.